Well, hello everybody and welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Hadoke, get a guest to choose a story and to secretly nominate their favourite things about it. I have to watch, commentate along and see if I can identify what those favourite things might be.
Hi, I'm Erica Lear and I'm part of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, and I also run my own Doctor Who conventions in the Northwest. The story I've chosen is the Caves of Androzani.
Well, hello everybody, and it's time for the final part of my sojourn to Androzani Major and Minor with a complete one-off Erica Lear. I mean, she's got to be a complete one-off. The universe cannot contain more than one. What a jolly, scatty pile of energy she is. Good fun to be around. A game contributor to this. Unsurprisingly, issuing anything sensible for as many mentions of how sexy Peter Davison is, which is not going to be high on my list of things that I will be eulogising about the Caves of Androzani. So it just goes to show we all enjoy the programme in different ways. So welcome to part 4 of the Caves of Androzani, or as it's doubtless known to Erica, the Peter of Peter, or the sexy Peter of sexy Peter. And let's see what happens in lovely Peter's final episode of Be Quiet. Be quiet. Sorry, I'm being heckled by the robot lady, whose name I will not mention, because when I do, I will activate yours, and that's how they intend to take over the world. But I'd actually, for the first time in ages, I'd remembered to lower her volume in order that I did not invoke her during the opening titles of the episode and therefore activate yours. So I'd got it all in place, and she's obviously taking umbrage and is giving me shtick. But she stopped now, the speaker who shall not be named. So I hope you have lined up your final Peter Davison episode, The Caves of Androzani Part 4. I am going to press play in 3, 2, 1. And of course, this, whilst it is the last Peter Davison episode of Doctor Who, it is not the last episode in which Peter Davison gets top billing as Doctor Who, because that has passed. That is episode 3 of The Caves of Androzani. That is the last time the Doctor, Peter Davison, is the first slide on the closing captions, because Colin Baker gets first billing on Peter Davison's last episode. I mean, I think, it tends to be that the newest Doctor always gets top billing, but I think I would be slightly sad if I were Peter. I'm sure Peter Davison doesn't care. He doesn't strike me as somebody that gives a monkey about such things. But I would kind of go, I'm in the last episode. Let me have top billing in my last episode. Anyway, we are picking up off universally acknowledged as the one of the high-end cliffhangers in the whole of Doctor Who history, but as Erica has pointed out, one that exists in the shadow of a bit where Peter Davison flicks his hair. But what a brilliant build-up of tension! The shuddering camera, the burning of the wrists. That shot is absolutely fantastic. The depth of field of the camera and everything. And the urgency of the performance, and you sort of buy why, because quite often it's, why doesn't the baddie just kill him? Well, I think there's enough to suggest, well, he doesn't want to be shooting, when a guy's at controls of his spaceship. Babe Davison throws himself backwards and forwards, then has a moment to sort of slightly regain consciousness, because he's, you can tell he's sort of bursting behind the eyes with the illness. He conveys that. I like the way that Maurice Reeves picks up the handcuff as if to go, so that's how he escaped. It's all there. Every single shot has either a piece of interaction or a piece of character or a little bit of plot emphasis. Never has a Doctor Who quarry looked so good. This is quite a protracted gun sequence we have here, and I loved these guns as a kid. For some reason, just the augmentation of the Uzis with the gas canisters seemed very grown up to me. Sand, that's again quite un-Doctor Who. We don't always see bullets hitting their target or taking chunks out of things. Certainly not in classic Doctor Who. Occasionally one or two, but because I have to set a charge for every time there's one of those. And this is nice, a nice quiet moment for Stotts. I did like Maurice Reeves. He was definitely my favourite character when I watched this first time around. Just because he seemed like he was from a grown-up program. Now one of these soldiers gets a few lines later on. He's called Ian Staples, and I was actually put in touch with Ian. He's a work colleague of someone that I'm in touch with, and but it was just getting to the back end of Who's Round. That's him, Ian Staples there, and I'm afraid I don't think I ever did get in touch. I got to the point where I was so tired, and I have dropped the ball on a few things, and it's odd because I sometimes have pointed other people in the direction of some people and say, did you ever contact that person? They go, oh no, I didn't. I go, well, why didn't they do that? But I've got my fair share of those as well. Time sort of runs away, and all of this is stuff one does in one's spare time. It's not my living. He says, as somebody that went on Patreon during lockdown, but that's slightly different. But generally the Doctor Who stuff is my hobby. This is brilliant. It is such an ignominious death, and brilliantly done, and I like the way he takes the trouble of sort of being thrown backwards by the force of the machine gun, but it's not. There's a slight arrogance to what Salatine does in that he drops his guard and he goes, it's fine, but he checks his body, checks for the pulse, and he's dead. But I do love that kind of, no, it's going to be fine. And then just, no heroics, nothing special, just mown down. We're only a couple of minutes into the episode, and one of the characters that we've got to know, and kind of, he's had that journey of being Jek's prisoner and coming back and then being in a position to help Chelak, and, the tides are turning, and then, no, just poof. Yeah, you're wiped out. So here are Jerry O'Brien and Roy Holder chasing Peter Davison. Both actors died in the same year, the year before last, as I record this. So I was able to keep them both together in my in memoriam video. That's Gareth Milne doing the fall down there. We need to see an interview with Gareth Milne. He's not featured on any of the DVD or Blu-ray extras, and he was Peter Davison's stunt double. That's a fantastic shot. I think there is an argument that in the brilliant staging of that chase, some of the angles make Krelper and Jerry O'Brien's non-speaking mercenary chap seem quite close to Davison. So although we've got the lovely thing of the bullets flying and the sand bursting up, there is a kind of, can they really not hit him from there? But actually those Uzis I think are quite those short, if they're short guns that do bursts of bullets, they're not the easiest to aim. And some of the angles, I think that it pulls off very convincing, but I don't think always entirely. And poor old Roy Holder is having to do a bit of keep up, as though he's sort of drilling a platoon, whereas he's actually just yelling at his mate. But I think they just about get away with it. But I think those who are inclined to be picky, and certainly not Weirs, would be going, oh, they could have, could they not hit a barn door? Which is always a criticism of, most action programs where people are firing guns, in that if they hit everybody they aimed at, there wouldn't be much room for drama. Although actually I'm not sure how easy it is to hit people with guns, especially machine guns held at hip height whilst you're running at the same time. But anyway, I think the giddy sort of camera work is beautifully done. Harper's clearly sort of planned that and enjoyed shooting it, and it's a good sequence. And then we have the contrast of it's much darker here, and the cameras are much closer, and it does feel like everything's closing in, and. Jek, I mean, I know we have that stuff of Morgus sort of turning to camera, but Jek is kind of narrating his stuff here as well. He's kind of saying that he's sort of talking to himself, but he is keeping us in on it. And I love this bit because I think you see this could look awful, and I like the way when he fires, you see sort of bits flying about, because there's not much space in that studio, and there's not much room for any new kind of sets. So it could just look like that your two remaining actors from these scenes kind of facing off like the Sea Devils and the guys in the sea base in Warriors of the Deep, where they're 3 foot away from each other, missing each other, but Harper shoots it well enough, and having Jack there kind of hiding in a crevasse while he's sort of busying about trying to lay up his defenses, and then suddenly Chelak's there and he's in a knock and he's firing and he's on the run, and it's it's frenetic as you can get with multi-camera. So this is how they shoot soap opera, this is how they shoot sitcom, and we're doing Doctor Who's equivalent of a sort of war movie. And I think it's really well done. And this is nice, suddenly having these two characters where you've got the sort of cold, glassy-eyed, but apparently, but very civilized Morgus, and you've got the pragmatic, dirty Stotts, but who essentially then says to his that I love the way this relationship turns, and he later on, doesn't he? He just goes, you're just a man with a gun, and Stotts is keen to sort of go, yeah, you do what you want, whatever, but I've got your number, pal. I'm not going to make a big deal of it. At the end of the day, I want to get out of here alive and with some money. I seem to recall in the book, in that bit later where he says you're just a man with a gun, we're going to split it half and half. I'm sure Terence Dick says, and Morgus works out and Morgus agrees, and then in his mind is working out a way of getting rid of Stotts so he gets to keep it all. But yeah, I don't like the idea of Morgus getting one and over on Stotts. I actually quite like it that they're both pragmatists who have both got the level of one another, and if they had got to the position where Morgus could have tried to kill Stotts and betray him at the end, but Stotts would have seen that coming and would have made a contingency whereby they both get. There's another universe where neither of them get killed and they both go off with their 50%. That's the happy ending. That's a decent effect shot, and again, the way that the close-ups and everything there are filmed of Davison are fantastic. And now Chelak's in, yeah. And I like the way that he fires. Jack manages to fire a shot off, but he's trying to keep Perry safe. Poor old Nicola Bryant doesn't get an awful lot to do other than be a bit poorly and be covered in a blanket in this episode. But it is a bit of a sort of macho bloodbath, isn't it? And here's a sign of not judging by appearances, Chelak, because if you weren't so upset by Sherazjek's face, you wouldn't have just got caught in the mud yourself. I remember Graham Harper, I think, saying in an interview that he felt Chelak's death was slightly botched, and it's not entirely clear what's going on. They sell it, but I think he'd wanted to show, with more finality that Chelak's getting, washed away by the mud, and with a wipe or something, but it doesn't quite happen. I think that's beautiful. The fact that she screams at him as Chelak has just done, but the handheld camera that backs away as he goes and hides under the table because of her fear at his physiognomy I think is very touching. Is that the movement of the camera there is absolutely beautiful. And it's not just the bad guys that recoil in horror at Jack. The nice old Perry does as well, and that that is the key to what is wrong with a lot of us now. I suspect my other half would go, but the cliche of the person with a deformity being twisted mentally by other people's reactions and that making them do bad things is an ableist cliche, and I would perhaps find it difficult to argue with that these days, but I think it's done very well here, and in isolation of all those other things that I know that are important about disability, etc. I think within the context of this, it works, although I wouldn't argue with anybody that had a difference of opinion, especially if they are people that have had to put up with the sort of assumptions and dismissals recoiling that people with difference and disability have to put up with. But what a brilliant camera move! What an excellent performance from Christopher Gable. You do feel sorry for Jack, and I don't mean pity, patronising. I mean you empathise with him, even though he's the bad guy. One of the bad guys. Is he the bad guy? Well, no, not everyone's shades of grey. Stotts and Morgus are horrible, but then you kind of like them. And I kind of like the fact that Stotts hates Krelper and Krelper hates Stotts. And it kind of makes sense that these guys go, do you know what? We're not going out there now. There's all sorts of dangers out there. We've got what we want. We're men of limited needs. And of course, the reality of it is, the stories don't really need Krelper anymore because Stotts has got Morgus to talk to. But Robert Holmes, being Robert Holmes, goes, well, they could easily have gone all four of them, and Krelper and the other one could have been, killed by the dragon or blown away by one of the dummies or whatever. It's much more fun to to do this. And again, it's so simply done. They've let their guard down, they have a chat, and he very slowly walks back. But I remember the vicar going, well, why would he shoot? He's going to damage his spaceship there if he shoots there. Well, you can sort of go, well, no, he's close enough to just hit them. And the controls were a little bit to the left. And, just come on, it's a really good scene. It's a really, lovely moment of kind of... violence, but and cruel, that is utterly in keeping with that character and those two characters' interactions, and just like the good bits for the good bits, and not sort of try and see the bad interpretation. I really do. Why do people? And I'm not a goody-goody, but why people watch things with a constant desire to pick holes? You don't win. You don't win. There's any number of reasons why it's okay for him to shoot in that space, if you want it to be. There's also any number of reasons for it not to be okay. Fine, but we can't... does the scene work because he walks up and slowly lets off the shots and then grins and walks off? Or does he then need to walk up to Morgus and go, now, you may be thinking, Morgus, why did I shoot them in the control room of my spaceship? But actually, that corner there's no important equipment anywhere. Do you know what I mean? Just fill in the blanks yourself and fill them in sympathetically to the program, or don't. But, when program makers don't just not think of a lot of this stuff, they hope that you're invested enough in the drama that they don't keep having to slow it down to explain it all to your satisfaction every step of the way, because I think sometimes if people had what they sometimes demand of program makers, they wouldn't like what they were given because it would be terribly boring. But anyway, I think I'm preaching to the converted, but sometimes it's cathartic to get it out. Quite nice that the celery gets... where I come from, it's a powerful restorative, of course, because in episode 1 we've had the gases in the Praxis range of the spectrum, and the Praxis range of the spectrum is from Praxis typewriter, isn't it? But I think the celery. Can we talk about the celery for? It's a weird choice, isn't it? Why? I do quite like Davison's costume now. I wasn't wild about it back in the day. I still think the cricket jumper ties it too much to one century and indeed one sport, whereas actually the jacket and the trousers don't, if you don't want them to. I think it's the piping on the jumper that is, you could see that in any school playing field at the time, or variations thereof. And I think it's just too time and place specific. But I nonetheless, I still think it's quite a nice costume. But who thought? Yeah, and what we really need is, did they reject other vegetables? Was there half an aubergine? Was there a sort of scattering of pomegranate seeds? What did they do? Was there a star? They could have here. This is where I wear my star fruit for mathematical excellence in fruit and in fruit and veg in pounds and ounces. And the love, you don't get lighting as dark as this. You don't get close-ups like this either. Harper's so bold as to go really, really close in and do profiles and sweat on people's faces, and, as I say, hair on Sharazjek's hands. Yeah, it's really good. Really, really good. And of course, what's, Davison's sacrifice. Yes, the death is, poor dragon. We have to see the dragon killed off. A mercifully brief appearance from the dragon, and a mercifully stationary one, flat on his back. But, the Doctor's death, it's initiated by as with Salatine's death, something, a death, a terrible, the most final, decisive ending, death. But the Doctor's this incarnation's death is initiated by a tumble into a sticky fuzzy ball. But that would be too much bathos, I think. So he does actually get a hero's journey here. He sacrifices his life to save his friend, and that means that in this final episode, as the murder and mayhem is going on around him, he goes to milk a bat. He goes to grapple with bat udders. Is that what Lord Melchett calls Edmund in General Melchett calls? Hello, bat udders. I remember the Vicar as well, and I don't know. I keep quoting the Vicar because recap. I watched these at the Vicar's house because he was kind enough to video Doctor Who for me because I was away at school because Mum had to go back to work and couldn't get me on, couldn't pick me up from the school bus, so I went and stayed at a local boarding school paid for by a charity. So it meant I missed Doctor Who and watched it at the Vicar's at the weekend, and some of his comments have stuck with me. Well, I mean, he's essentially the mouthpiece of God, so you take heed of what he says. But he had a criticism of the milking, but we'll come to that later. So let's have a look at, because I'm sure, look, his lip's a bit green, which it isn't when it's under the mask. But anyway, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's not. It's not really like the flesh has been peeled away and you can see the bones and the sinews underneath, which you would probably do now. He's just a bit sort of green and melty, which, considering people's reactions to him, it's quite light stuff. I quite like the single shots that Stotts is letting off here. But then, of course, we forgot about the android Salatine, and he comes in and shoots Stotts. I remember showing this to my university friends as an example of violence in Doctor Who, and them all finding this terribly funny. Whereas I remember, to me, it's the most sort of action-packed and sort of grim finale to a Doctor Who. But if you're not used to television drama shot in a studio, I suppose maybe it does look quite comical when people get shot and fall over, but and I think the decision to have Salatine hold him like that, and then his job done, it doesn't know what to do. I think that's a beautiful image, and the flame in front of the camera. But that sort of doll-like Salatine, sort of stuck with his dead master in his hands, is a beautiful directorial and performance choice. And the Doctor, he's met and encountered all of these people in this adventure, but he hasn't got time. He slips through the bloodbath and picks up his friend, and takes her back to the TARDIS. And you could quibble and go, well, why doesn't he give it to her now? And I suppose you go, well, he's got to get in and safe. He's got to get them off and safe. Make sure that she's on a journey rather than stranded on Androzani should anything happen to him. Again, you can rationalise it all, and it would be really boring if he had to sit and explain every one of his choices to the satisfaction of a cynical viewer. And I remember a friend of my mum's at work, her son had liked Doctor Who, so I'd written him a letter listing my top 10 and least favourite 10 stories or whatever, because it was de rigueur to suddenly start listing things you didn't like. And he listed Caves of Androzani in his bottom 10. And he cited, one of the reasons he cited was because when the TARDIS took off, the explosion goes off. He goes, well, that was lucky timing, wasn't it? That it exploded just after the TARDIS left. You go, but that's just a nice bit of direction. And also, it could be said that the TARDIS was, suppressing the seismic event until it went and released it. However, again, you you can find reasons to be generous, and it's not like it was a mistake. It actually it's a nice directorial touch that keeps the action going and shows what they're leaving behind, the chaos and the tumult that they are leaving behind for the sanctuary of the TARDIS. So again, but again, I think you're sympathetic when stories you like do things, and you're prone to be more critical when stories you don't like do things. So, but anyway, I did think I'm not sure I ever bothered to. I must have replied to him, but I don't think I pursued that friendship via correspondence as rigorously as I might have done, because I thought that was a poor point on which to hang an excellent story. Might regenerate, he says. And yes, so what the vicar says was, well, why didn't he drink some of the bat milk while he was there? And my argument would be, he got all the bat milk that there was. There was only enough milk in the bat for one person, and he gave it to Perry. And he does say only enough for you. Now, you can say only enough in the test tube for you. He should have got some more out of the bat. Or you could go only enough in the bat for you, and I choose that one. This was an odd decision to choose to hire the actors to come back in. Means that the actor's got a nice little bit of extra work. We often forget that, Sarah Sutton is in the Caves of Androzani. Not a clip. She actually comes back to do it. It means the Doctor's last word is Adric. I don't actually think this is a great regeneration, because you don't see it happen. I don't think the effect is... I think the effect in Logopolis is much more emotional and layered, because you see the sort of layers giving away. So much as I love Harper's direction, I'm not... this is fine, this regeneration. I remember it being very exciting at the time, but you don't really see it happen. So I think there are better examples of its kind. Although actually, a lot of them are just crossfades from one to the other. But the Logopolis is my favourite regeneration from the classic era. Anyway, nice to have Colin right up and close, and that's a nice touch to have him in the closing titles, to say he has arrived. But as I say, it's a bit of a shame for Davison. And then everybody gets has gone from having single slide to being on a double, because we've got far more cast members to fit in because of the rehiring of Ainley, Waterhouse, Sutton, Fielding, Strixon, and Gerald Flood, renowned classical actor Gerald Flood, coming back to be the voice of Bad Decision Chameleon. John Walker, excellent film cameraman, and great work on that. And Helen Arbuthnot, Alec Wheel, these were names to conjure when I was reading the credits as a boy. Excellent piece of television, excellent piece of Doctor Who, one of the best Doctor Who stories of all time. I think it stands up very, very well indeed, and is a if I was Peter Davison, I would be very pleased that I got to go out on that high. Not every Doctor Who story can be like that. Its grimness is as a counterpoint to the zany, zestful adventuring that Doctor Who does much of the time. But seeing as the norm of that time was paced in a much more pedestrian manner, was much less ambitious in terms of depth of character, sometimes of pacing, of staging of the drama of not only in terms of the visuals, but again in terms of pace and in terms of atmosphere, and also Robert Holmes knew how to write Doctor Who, and a lot of that is very funny, but it's funny within its own caustic, sardonic, violent, cruel world, and it is about as cruel and grim as Doctor Who gets. The mistake maybe was Eric Saywood realising how good those stories were and then trying to do that all of the time. And of course, pendulums swing. It's like with comedy. As soon as somebody does a bit of comedy that nobody's been doing for a while, it seems fresh and amazing. People go, "Oh God, we want more of that." And then, of course, because people are quite unimaginative, by people I mean television executives, quite unimaginative, they go, let's have all things like that and nothing that isn't like that. And then everybody goes, we're a bit fed up of all of that. And then somebody does something else that hasn't been done for a while. And they went, oh, yeah, we want all of that now. Whereas actually, of course, the beauty of Doctor Who is that you can follow Planet of Fire with Caves of Androzani, and then follow Caves of Androzani with the Twin Dilemma, I mean, you couldn't get 3 more different adventures, I don't think, or different styles, and purely in terms of being, what it is as a production. Caves, towers above both of those, even though Fiona Cumming doesn't really do anything wrong with Planet of Fire, but it's not in the same league in terms of dramatics, and they're aiming for different things. Planet of Fire is trying to say interesting things about religion, just says them quite slowly. Anyway, but they're both on a sort of sand-blasted planet, but they both go for very different things going on them. Anyway, look, I love the Caves of Androzani. I have to choose a favourite thing about that episode. I also have to choose a favourite thing overall. Well, I think I'm going to work backwards. I think my favourite thing overall, so that I don't forget, and because it's a unique pairing, really, because Peri isn't a companion in Planet of Fire. She is the new character coming in. So I'm bending them. I'm maybe bending. It doesn't matter. My rule, my house, my rules. It's the Fifth Doctor and Peri, who I think are a brilliant pairing. I think they're both excellent in that. I think both of their performances are flawless. The only slight false note is when Nicola Bryant says glass in that first scene, and that's because it's been robbed of its context of the opening TARDIS scene, where I think he said glass and she's mimicking how he's done that. But because we lose that, there's that slightly awkward moment, that's uneasy on the ear, makes you go, what? And I have to say credit, and I think Nicola Bryant does a very good job with Peri's American accent. I remember it was pretended at the time that she was American, and that was how she spoke. And I remember being with her with an American fan. I was talking to Nicola. I didn't know her very well at this point, and this American fan said, "Yeah, you didn't fool us for a moment." And I was like, "Why would you say that in front of one?" I think it's a perfectly good American accent. And maybe if you're an American, you might pick up things, but remember it's an American accent for British television as well, which is slightly different, because actually sometimes I've done a lot of work with accents, certain accents where you go for 100% authenticity actually sound wrong on the ear. This was an important lesson I was taught by a dialect coach when I was doing a Canadian play, and one of the actresses had the word immoral, and it was because it was Canadian, because it was North American. She should have said immoral, something. She should have sort of rounded the O, and she didn't. She went immoral, and he said that's actually wrong. But if she does it correctly, it will sound wrong to our ears, and attention will be drawn to the accent. It was a really interesting lesson about sometimes you have to bend the rules slightly in order to get the right cadence for the ears of the people that you're doing it to. And there's been a couple of occasions in The Archers, which is a radio drama, where I remember once there was a Scottish character and once there was a French character, and Radio 4 got loads of letters going, well, that actor's Scottish accent is awful, and that French guy, he sounds just so wrong, it's a terrible accent. And it was a French actor using his own accent and a Scottish actor using his own accent. So again, it's that thing of sometimes audiences are quite keen to pick up on things, even though the factual basis of their observation is incorrect. But the main point of that story was of this one of why has this person said this to Nicola Bryant to her face in the first place, regardless of whether her interpretation is correct, whether the audience member's interpretation is correct or not of Nicola Bryant's accent, which, as I say, sounds fine to me. It's the fact that you'd say it to that actor who might have a certain amount of pride in their craft and not want to be told that you thought a thing, even if the thing that they were doing, you didn't think they did very well, and sort of casting yourself as a hero, and you go, yeah, you didn't fool us for a moment. And also, but why you would say that to that person? What could possibly be? How could that person's day be made any better by you saying that to them? Why? What? And it wasn't the person deliberately going, I'm going to have a go at Nicola Bryant. It was actually quite a nice chat that they were having, but they said that thing that. And I don't think they realised it. If you'd done that to me, if you'd come up to me about a performance I'd given and said, that aspect of it, that wasn't very good, I would be desperately hurt. And credit to Nicola Bryant, who took it absolutely in her stride, was very, very, very polite back. And then when the person went away, I went, I don't effing believe that. And she was very magnanimous and very, very down to earth and very, took it in a way that I don't think I would have myself. And I think all credit to Nicola Bryant for that, who, as I say, I think her accent is good, but I also think her performance in Caves is stunningly good. And she actually doesn't get that much to do in episode 4. But I think all her interactions with Jack are superb, and I think the relationship between the Fifth Doctor and Perry is brilliant. And I would have liked to have seen more of them on telly, because I think they're a really good pairing. So my bonus thing for Caves of Androzani is the Fifth Doctor and Perry as a team, which is a short-lived team on screen, who I think are among the strongest TARDIS pairings of all time. Davison, I can't praise as an actor enough. Didn't like his Doctor at the time because he wasn't Tom Baker. I've said this a lot. I think he's an extremely accomplished character actor. He now says he was too young for Doctor Who. I don't think he was. I think he's an old man in a young man's body. I think he's witty, he's funny, he's got that breathless energy. He keeps the pace going all the time in those stories. Often, many times, which, there's a lot of wandering up and down beige corridors to do. He keeps the intensity going, sometimes through the sheer force of his performance alone. And I buy that he's an intelligent, sometimes waspish, sometimes fretful, and slightly eccentric, but wise, ancient time traveller. I think he's great. I think he's an excellent Doctor. And when I was younger, was a stupid idiot. But even when I was younger, I loved this story. But as I say, I was quite surprised to learn it was the best story ever until I, came to watch it again and went, oh no, I can see why people like this. And it's a story that I would, even now, I would watch for pleasure, and marvel at the brilliance of individual shots, individual. Because there's a bit, isn't there, when he's running on the. When he's running on through the sand, is it during the chase, or is it when he's running back to Jack's cave or whatever? There's a bit, and the camera sort of moves along with him, and there's a wow, a sort of almost westerny, chasey refrain in that rattlesnake music of Roger Limbs that just seems so right, and it seems like you've seen and heard that combination in movies, but never in Doctor Who, and again, it just kind of elevates Doctor Who to be doing things with bigger budgets and bigger exposure and were watched by proper grown-ups and everything did, and that makes you feel elated and lifted by your show that often is made with lots of imagination and drive, but often a real sense of compromise and sometimes desperation. But that I think Harper elevates everything, and I love that. That great giddy filming that he does, and yeah, Roger Lim's score is superb as well. But yeah, so Davison and Nicola Bryant as my bonus thing, as my all-round thing. And remember, it might be that if I choose something before Erica chooses it, So if she chooses something now as her overall thing that I've chosen from a previous episode, I get the points for that, because the odds are stacked against me. Very Androzani like, the chances of getting out alive for me in Happy Times and Places are very slim. So I need some. So yeah, if I've chosen something before Erica, even if I've chosen it a couple of episodes ago, I do get the point for that. I'm not going to win this because she's already outsmarted me with her, by playing the sexy Peter Joker on episode 3, when most sensible people would have chosen the cliffhanger. What's the other bit? I mean, I could choose. Do I choose the whole cast for episode 4? There's individual characters that I like. I love that last image of Jack in the arms of Salatine, and the kind of the kind of shut down marionette that Salatine becomes because his master is dead, and that sad final image of that beautiful, very statuesque physique, flopped into the arms of an inert robot is there's something very moving about that, especially with that flame, and then the fact that it goes out of focus, and even the soundscape. The sound is beautifully done as well. Attention to detail, Graham Harper. Thank you very much. I do like that last image. Stotts for me was the best thing about it when I was a kid. So kudos to Maurice Reeves. But I think all of the cast are good. I think the fact that everyone in it is excellent, right down to bottom of the credits, David Neal as the president. So do I just say the cast? What will Erica? Erica's been choosing individual moments. But she might just say Peter Davison's blooming ankles for all I know. There's no point trying to see how I can outmaneuver Erica. I do think it's a strong cast. But then again, what about Robert Holmes? The fact that it's written by Robert Holmes is key. It's Robert Holmes' return to Doctor Who since The Power of Kroll, which has quite a few similarities as a story, and just goes to show how the same set pieces, subject matter, kind of characters, with a few tweaks here and there, can be very, very different and bring different rewards and or penalties. Although, as listeners to Happy Times and Places will know, I'm quite fond of many aspects of The Power of Kroll. But I suspect if Graham Harper had directed it, those scenes where they're looking on the on the radar at the Baguel would have been much more tense than dear John Leeson going, "Oh well, this storm's going to be a daddy." But anyway, it would have been George Sweeney sweating and punching the screen. But listen, so Robert Holmes, the cast, that image, that chase. I love that chase. That the fact that the only survivors, I think it's the discontinuity guide say it, don't they? That Perry and Timmin are the only survivors of a male bloodbath, and Timmin's deposing of Morgus is glorious, and I like that. Stotts is you're just a man with a gun now. And I do like that sort of uneasy truce between the two. All the characters are great. Oh, I could go on. Oh, I think I probably have been. I could just say it's the Caves of Androzani, couldn't I? I'd just go, it's the Caves of Androzani. It's just flipping great. My favourite thing about episode 4. This isn't an official document. This isn't something that matters. So I don't. Sometimes I think, well, I must say the cast because they deserve to have their credit made. Their brilliance made official. This isn't an official document. This isn't some sort of golden laurel that will go down in history. Just what did you like, Toby? So I'm going to go for the image of Jack in the arms of Salatine, because I think that sums up a lot of what is superior about this story. That kind of attention to detail, that kind of emotional investment in the characters, that kind of grimness, because it is a beautiful image, and yet the Doctor just runs past it, picks up Perry and sods off. The fact that it goes out of focus, so that what it sounds like as well, it's just a tiny moment that encapsulates the class of the entire production. And I'm sure Robert Holmes will get his dues elsewhere, as will all of those actors. And yeah, get over yourself, Toby. So, for episode 4, the image of Sharazjek in the arms of Salatine, the robot Salatine, and my overall thing is the relationship between Peter Davison as Doctor Who and Nicola Bryant as Perry, and that winning pair. And I mean, now I know I've just said Nicola Bryant and winning, but I mean the winning pair that is Peter Davison and Perry, not any other sort of quiet at the back. So, right, Erica is, I just need to line Erica up. Erica's favourite thing about episode 4.
Episode 4. Well, I just think the romantic side of me. I just like the way the Doctor got the bat's milk and saved Perry. I think it was just beautifully done. Him fighting not only his own illness from spectroxemia, but fighting to get the bat's milk, fighting to save Perry. And this was a situation that he stumbled upon. He wasn't sent, or he didn't meddle. He just found himself, as he says, in this local war. And I just like the good old-fashioned storytelling of him getting the antidote and rescuing the girl. Okay, so a kind of special thing to mention, that this is the first ever regeneration I witnessed. I was a bit too young to remember Tom to Peter, but this was my first regeneration of actually watching an episode go out and the new Doctor coming in. And I remember feeling very sad, and then the excitement of here's the new Doctor, here he is, and I just remember the thrill and the excitement of seeing it for the first time. And I didn't get to see another one then until Sylvester McCoy turned into Paul McGann, because we didn't get a Colin one. So I was glad to see an actual live regeneration. Okay, so that's been my unusual picks for the podcast. I hope that's all right, Toby.
Oh, don't worry, Erica. Some people have chosen more unusual things than that. I think yours were perfectly reasonable. I do think your choice of Peter Davison's death being, because he stumbled upon something, which fits with the tone of that piece, is a good choice, because, it is an heroic gesture in what is a relatively minor skirmish. But of course, it doesn't matter how minor it is if the stakes are high, because you're invested in the characters and the situation is made as tense as possible. You don't need to destroy universes if you don't want to. And I think it's important for Doctor Who to occasionally go, no, we can get great drama out of a local war. We don't have to destroy half the universe and then forget to put it back in order to give a sense of scale. And I would argue that actually there's more of a sense of scale because you feel every individual death in that in a way that you don't when you see, a planet blotting out that you've never been to. So I think it's instructive for Doctor Who to sometimes realise that it can tell a story with relatively small stakes. Not even the Earth is under threat in the caves of Androzani, which is the sort of cardinal rule of New Who, and an understandable one, and one I have a huge deal of sympathy for. But actually, that Robert Holmes is capable of breaking all of the rules and still making it work. And also that the fact that it's relatively small stakes, the fact that there's a lot of unluckiness that goes into Davison's demise, has a sort of dramatic cussedness to it. It works within the tone of that piece, and and Harper's given it the correct tone for that to go. It's a sort of pointless death, as many are in stupid wars and stupid battles over money and drugs and whatever. And the Doctor's essentially just caught in the crossfire, which is pretty grim, but it's a grimness that works because it means that you feel it and you feel the pointlessness of it. And that creates this sort of grimy, sweaty, unfair, unjust world of this particular story in a series which can often be about somebody in a brightly coloured coat arriving on a planet and going, indubitably I shall be getting into the affairs of these strangely hatted people, and it's all a bit sort of jolly and sometimes silly. So it's a great leveller in that way, the Caves of Androzani, that I think does the series some good. But as I say, you wouldn't want it to always be like that. And yes, the first regeneration I can totally understand, and I was a bit hard on the regeneration. But again, this is entirely personal, isn't it? The first regeneration I saw was Tom Baker's, and that is very, very well done. And also, the flashbacks are clips to old stories. And I was, when I was being brought up, anything that had a clip from an old story automatically made that episode better, because it was something from before when things were better, and not like the present, which has me in it, which I loathe. So we're all a product of our own external and internal stimuli. So actually, there's nothing wrong with the Davison debate. It is actually one of the best regenerations, because at least it has some, it has a pace and a rhythm, and it builds to a climax in a way that some of those simple crossfades don't, and in a way that some of those ones where it's botched because we don't see it, or one of the actors wasn't there, or whatever, and all the new ones are pretty much the same. So so actually, I'm almost regret what I said at the end of this, 10 minutes ago, in the whole great mosaic, in the whole great pantheon of Doctor Who changes of lead actor. It's probably one of the most effective. It's just, I think, for me, having sucked on the teat of Logopolis, I found the taste of what came from the udders of the Caves of Androzani was not as satisfying. Wow, I don't know where that went, and I'm not particularly happy that it did, but you get my meaning. It's a great sequence, and as and the fact that Davison has the precognizance of it before the ship crash lands as well, it means that the whole thing is building. There's an inexorable build towards the inevitability of the end of the story, which is the death of the leading man. So no, well done. So even though I may never love it in the way that it should be loved because of what I had been exposed to prior to that, and the time that I saw Logopolis, which meant it was so momentous for me. And then of course I was an ancient and cynical how old 9-10-year-old when Caves of Androzani was on, so no, it is a very good regeneration, and I can see why Erica would choose it, and it's none of your you shall be killed for just standing around at the end of the story, and I'll zap you with that laser beam. Now go and eat an ice cream and be sad. Right, Caves of Androzani. What a brilliant Doctor Who story. Erica Lear, what a brilliant Doctor Who personage. And I'm glad I finally got around to doing that, because she is one of the earliest people to respond to the call. And as I say, I was slightly, oh, come on, Eric, you've snapped up one of the favourites. I can't think of anybody I would rather have given Peter Davison's last story to than the Uber Davison fan. That is Erica Lear. So thanks to Erica, who her Liverpool events and conventions are great. She's a terrific character, so do avail yourself of her and her wares if you can. Her husband Alan will be along to do The Curse of Fenric at some point, so it's not the last we have heard from the Lear household. So we will be hoping that they will let us in again and not shut the doors on me and 50 of my knights as we come to turn up to watch The Curse of Fenric. But that's not imminent, as you know. These I mix up the order of these to mix up the style of stories and to mix up the contributors and to mix up the eras and everything. So we will be doing something completely different next time. I think I'm going for a little bit of black and white, right back to olden times, and then I'll be going forward to some modern Who, and then we'll just keep going in this random quest to find all that is good about Doctor Who, and to celebrate anything good I can squeeze from the nipples. Like the Doctor with the Queen bat. I will squeeze all the goodness from the nipples of any passing Doctor Who story, and sup on the benefits of its goodness. I was going to say it's lactic goodness then, but well, anyway, there we are. I think I've ended on a suitably milky note. And thank you to Erica. Thanks to you for listening. That was The Caves of Androzani. What a classic, wasn't it, Adric? Well, thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Erica Lear, who you can find on Twitter at Erica Lear 3. I'm grateful to Erica and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Lisa and Andrew, David Matthewman, John McClay, Ross McPhillips, Stuart Mitchell, Nathan Moore, Christopher Newman, Matthew Newton, Graham Knott, Dave Owen, Melvin Pena, Keith Pirry, Jonathan Potter, Kevin Parker, Scott Pride, Dylan Rees, John Rivers, Mark Sandon, Jim Sangster, Graham Slate, David Shepherdson, Stephen, all small case but no surname, Neil Tate, Nick Temple, Sabrina Tirabassi, Apollo C. Vermouth, Gary Wales, Adam Westwood, Rich Wiggins, Michael Williams, Andrew Willis, Andrew Wilson, Sydney Wilson, and Stephen White. The music is by Dave Gates, and the podcast artwork is by Dylan Patterson. Now, the eagle-eared amongst you will notice that David Matthewman, who I credited on the last episode by mistake as Dave Matthewman. I have no idea if David objects to Dave or not. It was because I was close to saying, the name of the music guy, who is Dave Gates. So I think I turned David into Dave. And then I had a moment preparing this one where I thought, oh God, do I have to go back and redo that? Because some people might very much object. I remember working with an actor called Jonathan, who I called John once. And he went, no, it's Jonathan. He wasn't unkind or anything, but he was, no, mate, it's Jonathan. And I don't know if David is, no, it's not Dave. It's David. It's proper David as opposed to other Dave. Anyway, that's a different story. So, if you like the way I pronounced David's name, because he might not have done. So he basically he's been twice in a row. Not everyone gets twice in a row. You get your name read out occasionally if you are a patron of this podcast. More often, the higher up the tiers that you go, or in David's case, twice in a row, but in different iterations, in case one of them is deeply offensive. I am grateful to everybody, even those whose names I get right. And they are people who've all gone to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where for as little as £3 a month, you can get your name read out on the credits, usually properly. But I can abbreviate it if you like. I can say it in whatever way you choose. You get to tell me, or not. You can remain anonymous. Some people have preferred not to be outed, and I completely understand why. And some have preferred to use pseudonyms, which is why there's a Robin Bland and there's a Sydney Wilson and various other people who are hiding their names to protect the innocent. I should also point out that actually, I don't think I read her name, foolishly. Erica Lear is also a patron, having joined Patreon to listen to herself being on the podcast, which is perfectly fine. In fact, that's what I should do to everybody, isn't it? Is go, yes, if you want to listen, you have to. So hello, Erica. I know you're listening pretty much as soon as I've done this. Thank you for a great contribution, and for the contribution to the Patreon, which I'm taking a very long time to say is a thing you can do. Patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where, I mean, getting your name read out on the credits is the smallest of the things you get done. You also get bonus releases, you get your own special podcast, Far Too Much Information, and you get early releases of all the podcast, which you get far in advance of iTunes. It feels weird doing it, doesn't it? Going, oh, you can go to this place and donate money. But it's not a grift. There's 3 releases a week. I do produce stuff for it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to pay for it. If you only like it enough not to have to pay for it, you don't have to, because it's out on iTunes and Spotify and all those places. But if you're inclined to subsidise, I hesitate to say the arts, but self-employed chatterboxes, that's partially how comedians and performers and writers and purveyors of information or enthusiasm, it's part of how we do what we do these days, and I'm trying not to be shy about it, although it's not a natural fit, he says, whilst still wearing the clothes. So, if the suit fits Toby, wear it. So, yeah, patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. There's no expectation there at all, but yeah, there are rewards if you can count such things as rewards, and if you don't, that's fine. And also, I know that times are tough for everybody, and increasingly so. So if you do not want to do or can't do the monthly commitment, you can do a one-off contribution at ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke if you just occasionally want to buy me a coffee, or you can do what costs you nothing by supporting these at Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, by leaving a 5-star review and lots of lovely comments. They really help. Well, this has been a long one, so I'll sort of cut it off there, I guess. We've hit the hour. Goodness me. Caves is great, though, isn't it? It's odd that thing going, well, something is so championed by everybody. I completely understand that desire to sort of go, therefore it's a fresh new perspective if I can sort of point out what's wrong with it. And I do feel that inclination about certain things, but I honestly don't with Caves. That one's been no effort to sing to high heaven about, because it's one that I really like. I don't think I mentioned that. Martin Cochrane, who has recently in a Who thing doing the rounds, it's been suggested online, is the brother of Michael Cochrane, who is in Black Orchid and Ghostlight. They're not brothers. I'm pretty certain of that. Michael Cochrane is very English, and Martin Cochrane is rather Scottish. And I think they have played brothers, but they're not brothers. But Martin Cochrane, who is Shellac, is married to Adrienne Burgess, who is Veet in The Sunmakers. And they were some of the earliest people I did for Who's Round, because Louise Jameson still knows Adrienne, who's frustratingly not on the DVD of The Sunmakers, which is mad, because they know each other. And she's married to Martin, and they actually live not far from somewhere I had to be a couple of weeks after Louise had dropped me the line. So it all just sank into place. But it's an early interview, so it's not one of my best. And it's quite a short one. I think we only did 25 minutes. So it was pretty much in and out. But it was nice to do, and they were nice people. And Martin's had a very interesting career. He's in the film of Patriot Games, and he was also in a series called Specials that was launched with a couple of other dramas when the BBC were doing some new dramas in the sort of mid-80s. And Ron Donachie, who's also Scottish, who's in the Tooth and Claw, was playing a Brummie, and he was obviously supposed to be the sort of colourful character, because it was set in the Midlands, and it was Specials, and had quite a good theme. And it was released with no little sort of enthusiasm, and was a bit of a damp squib and has vanished without trace. Nobody remembers specials now, but Martin was essentially the lead or the highest ranking, of the ensemble. And then I think he took a bit of time out from acting, but he's back. But I noticed him. I watched Mission Impossible 4 the other day, and he was one of the Senate in that. I didn't notice him having a line, but maybe he did because I didn't realise it was him till later. But he's there, and he must have had a line at some point, even if it doesn't make it into the cut. But I don't know. I can't. But yeah, he's there. He's in Mission Impossible 4. Which spookily I was watching and going, oh yeah, Jeremy Renner's interesting. He's a good presence and blah 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 blah. And then come off watching that because it's the one Mission Impossible film I hadn't seen. For some reason, it hadn't been available for free when I was in the Mission Impossible mood, having taken my son to see the latest one in the cinema. So I caught up over Christmas on Mission Impossible. Was delighted to see Martin Cochran. Then Jeremy Renner. I was going, oh, Jeremy Renner. And then, clicked on my internet to notice the news that Jeremy Renner had run himself over with a snowplow, was in critical condition in hospital. As I record this, he seems to be doing better, but it's gonna take some rebuilding, I think. So I mean, I don't know what any of that means, but it shows how my thought processes can go from something that happened ages ago to something that happened quite recently, to tie in with something else that was being done, to tie in with something that is, as I record this, literally hot off the press, to when you listen to this will be part of history. So what that says about time, I don't know, but it's that the threads all seem to join in some odd way that is of no matter to anybody. It's all remarkably trivial, like the Doctor's death in the caves of Androzani. So we kind of end on a sort of point, the sort of point that actually it's all ultimately rather pointless. But is that what I do? I acknowledge the pointlessness of what I do, but I may as well enjoy it. There's no point in being pointless, as we all are. There's no point in being pointless unless you can revel in the pointlessness for the pointlessness that it is. And that, in the end, is the point.